Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang here in our San Francisco studio. Now, most people say that the difference in foreign policy between the U.S. and China can be attributed to the difference in the political systems. But our guests today say there's a fundamental difference between the two countries that's much deeper. And that difference would make it hard for the U.S. and China to resolve their issues, even if the Communist Party undergoes reform. Today we have with us NTD China analyst Lan Su. Lan Su, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
So if the tensions between the two countries, the U.S. and China, aren't caused by the political systems or caused by the, what each country individually wants, what is that difference?
Well, the difference is how do you respect the culture. I mean, there's basically the problem facing the communist system and problem facing whole China. It's the culture that the system is built upon. It's totally bankrupt.
So you're saying the Communist Party's culture is bankrupt, or Chinese
that's
culture?
Yeah, the communist culture is go bankrupt. So so there's nothing that coming out of the mouth of the Beijing's leader people will trust anymore. This is it's a bankrupt of trust.
So what do you mean by culture?
Now, if you look at the culture, now, except the communist culture, any culture, at all, it's really, there are two main elements. There's faith and humanity. For example, American cultures, all men are created equal. And in that 5 words, really brilliant statement, there's man, there's a creator of the man, that's faith, and there's a fundamental principle of our humanity that's called equal rights, right? So same thing if you go back to traditional Chinese culture. There are faith and humanity. There are 3 teaching systems that to establish the traditional Chinese culture. There's Taoist teaching, Buddhist teaching, and Confucius teaching. Now the differences is, the Taoist and Buddhist teaching are more about faith, while the Confucius teaching is more emphasized on humanity. But however, the communism from ever day one, the communism exists. They are anti all the spiritual faith, and they are also anti-humanity and human nature. Now, the idealism of communism, everyone work as hard as possible, but only take as little as you need. That's anti-human nature.
So you're saying it's anti-human nature because people can't do that? Or?
Yeah, no, that's not human nature, right? So now, and then, the violent revolution is really anti-humanity. So therefore, from since day one, they're anti both faith and humanity.
So you're really talking about the value system.
That's right. So therefore, that's why, whatever the public policy they made, and also the way how to deal with international society. Now, how can you hold whatever they tell you accountable? What's the value behind it? There's no value anymore. What do they believe? If they believe nothing, how do you hold what they tell you accountable? So that's the main problem, that not really just facing Chinese people, because it's also facing the international society, because the foreign policy is really just the extension of their domestic policy.
So can you give me an example of how that, if you were to look at it in this kind of system that you've set up, that the values are the most important thing, and the values and the culture show why the U.S. and China have all these problems. Can you give me an example of that? Yeah,
well, for example, we are losing American jobs. That's one of the conflict in when we try to solve Sino-U.S. relation.
Which is the trade imbalance.
Really trade imbalance problem. Now, if you look at it, the reason that American workers are losing job is because now value-wise in China, they don't talk about equality, so all the workers' rights are not protected. They don't have a right to establish their own independently run union.
Right.
Right. So therefore, their wage are way down over there, purposely, suppressed. So if their wages are way down, therefore their goods are sold in U.S. market very cheap. That's why we are losing American jobs. If we don't stand up for workers of Chinese people, their workers' rights, if we don't stand up for their rights, then we lose our jobs. So, most of people don't realize is when Chinese products, they are sold in US market, we're not only buying the products, we are also buying the values which make the products in the system.
So you're saying basically the cheap products are supporting the Chinese system.
Yeah, if we are, if we don't really, stand up for the workers' rights over there, then the values, because, that's against the workers' rights, that's embedded in the product, and they are sold in our market. Therefore, our workers lose jobs. So that's, quid pro quo.
So you're saying that's not something that can be solved by kind of talking about in terms of like what the U.S. is doing now with the trade imbalance, like talking about
right. If you are only in the conversation, if you only want to say, hey, we want to balance, we want to sell more stuff to China, and we want American job back, that doesn't happen. What it make happen is we raise our voice loud for workers' rights in China. So have them have their, their workers' rights protected, have them have their own union established, Therefore, this thing will change.
So you're kind of talking about kind of putting rights together, like the values of having those, workers' rights or equal rights together with the trade issue. And it seems like we in the U.S. have actually purposely decoupled human rights from trade. When Clinton was saying we should sponsor, back in '99, sponsor China to join the World Trade Organization, we need to help them give them permanent most favored nation trading status. It'll be good for the Chinese people and it will be good for the American people.
Well, that was very interesting because, it was a big back in Clinton's time, there was a big wishful thinking, of doing business with China will change China. But the problems become, lately many people realize that China has changed by doing business with Western world, but has they changed in the ways we want? Doing business will good for Chinese people, that's a big assumption at the time of Clinton, but is that true today? A few people, very few people, the party officials really got rich, but most people, they still, not really much improved, right? That's why there's so much social unrest going on in China.
So at the time, it was almost like by doing business, our values will be transmitted to China or the Chinese people. So if that didn't work, what should the U.S. be doing?
Well, what we really need to do is taking consideration of Chinese people's interest when really we talk about the U.S.-China relationship. Not really much to think, if the regime is going to like it or not. If we really, when we talk, every year there is such a U.S.-China strategic talk.
Right.
Are we, as U.S. government, our administration, and take enough consideration of Chinese people's interest? Really, when you are talking such a large group of society's interests, you're really talking about the value. You can help them.
So how will the Communist Party respond to that? I mean, should the U.S. think that the Communist Party is going to, listen to their suggestions, or won't they be upset that the U.S. is, interfering with what they're doing in China?
Well, I think nowadays, there's even the majority of Chinese people in China already realize that, the party's interest, it's really against the people's interest. So therefore, it's for the U.S. leaders, they need to realize that too. They really need to put the people's interest as a priority over the party's interest. So not really from either stability or or other concerns, but taking Chinese people's interest as their major concern too when they make the public policy or when they make the strategy of Sino-U.S. relationship.
So you think that they shouldn't be worried about what the Communist Party thinks?
Well, Communist Party, as we talk about it, the culture of this party is really built based upon has totally bankrupt. So the Communist Party going into the history, it's just it's a timing. It's sooner or later it's going to happen. So if you really too much over concern the interest of the party, you are really prolong the history of the Chinese Communist Party's the ruling. Right, so it's more about how do you, make a policy to support the Chinese people as a whole, their interest.
So let me ask kind of the last question. Do you think the U.S. is doing it? Like, for example, when Obama went to China in 2009, he did talk to a group of university students, and he made sure to emphasize kind of the common values that the U.S. and China share, or like Chinese people share with the U.S. people. And he specifically talked about, kind of freedom, like internet freedom, and why people in the U.S. think it's so important to have kind of internet freedom, freedom of the press. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Yeah,
we need to do a lot more. You think about you do a simple comparison between Bill Clinton and Obama in China. Actually, President Obama speaks much less than Bill Clinton, because at the time of Bill Clinton visited Beijing, China's GDP was number 8 in the world, but while Obama visited Beijing, China was already number 2. Mm-hmm. So you see, we are actually historically we are back off from what we stand for. Right, U.S. is a leader of free world. That never changed. Do we still want that status? We actually back off from what this country, our founding father, want. So I think that's a big mistake.
So you're saying the values are not just a nice to have then?
Oh, it's a must for the mutual relationship, and I think over the time that even Obama administration realized it. And President Obama visited the U.S. as the first president visited China as first year of presidency, right? So, but he didn't get much what he wanted. Then later in the second year, I think overall he became better. The first one he first re-elected, he first visited Thailand, Myanmar and Cambodia, all these countries around China threatened by the power of communist regime in China.
So you're saying the U.S. is kind of turning towards that and realizing that they can't get everything they want from China.
Yeah, unless the value-wise they help by raising the right law about the values that not just the U.S. want, but Chinese people want, right? So it really stands for the Chinese society as a whole to fighting for their interest. So I think that's the good direction that will drive the Sino-U.S. relation.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today, Lan Su, and talking about this issue. And thanks for watching. That's all for this episode of China Focus. For more on this and other topics in China, join us at ntd.tv.